Entrancing, isn't it? How certain relationships feel like labyrinths of longing and retreat. Welcome to Are You in the Anxious Avoidant Trap, where we'll explore the subtle dance of reaching out and pulling away, a complex choreography that can leave even the steadiest among us breathless. Now, imagine the scene. Two partners, locked in a curious tango, one inching ever closer, the other quietly stepping back. Why do such connections often end with sleepless nights, whispered doubts, and restless hearts? And more importantly, how do we find a way out? I once knew a fellow, let's call him Henry, whose manner was as gentle as an evening breeze. He'd grown up in a bustling household, starved for the warm embrace of parental attention. When a hint of affection finally drifted his way, he seized it with wide-eyed delight. It shaped him into a person who yearned for validation, a hand to hold, a voice to reassure. Later in life, when Henry found himself with a partner whose default was to retreat at the very hint of closeness, he was left in an endless state of worry. That tight feeling in his chest, he confided to me once, was the sensation of anticipating rejection every second. His partner, by contrast, had grown up in quite the opposite fashion. She was raised to hold her emotions close, to find safety in solitude, and to consider intimate conversation an uncharted ocean, full of lurking shadows. So, she built her fortresses, walls went up, boundaries were drawn. While Henry asked, "Do you still care for me?" she responded with silence, or changed the subject, or found reasons to keep her distance. Their pattern played out like a timeless ballet, neither of them quite aware of the steps they were taking. This is the anxious avoidant trap in its simplest form. One partner feels uneasy in the absence of closeness and needs constant reassurance. The other partner finds the intensity of emotional demands overwhelming and requires room to breathe. Round and round they go, chasing, running, pleading, withdrawing, until both collapse from the strain. It might seem impossible to break free, but let's not forget that acknowledging the cycle is the first step toward dismantling it. Picture a grand amphitheater where each of us performs a role determined by old beliefs, hidden fears, and fragile hopes. Some nights, the anxious partner might imagine that every glance or pause is a prelude to abandonment. Meanwhile, the avoidant partner dreads the feeling of being trapped or consumed by someone else's needs, so they quietly slip away. The resulting spiral can be bewildering if you're in it. The anxious person thinks, "I'll show them how much I care," intensifying the pursuit. The avoidant individual might respond, "This is too suffocating," retreating even more. Hardly a recipe for harmony. Now, in my time observing human nature, one of my favorite pursuits really, I've noticed how easily we can misread these signals. The anxious soul interprets distance as a looming catastrophe. The avoidant soul perceives closeness as an invitation to danger. Oddly, both are seeking protection, one from loneliness, the other from possible entanglement. Yet the more vigorously each protects themselves, the more stuck they become. It's like a riddle with no apparent answer. That is, until we decide to rewrite it. It begins with a bit of self-inquiry. Where do I lean when life grows turbulent? Towards seeking reassurance or evading intimacy? What lies at the heart of that impulse? The anxious person might uncover old heartbreak, a family pattern of inattentive caregivers, or pivotal moments that shaped a fear of abandonment. The avoidant partner may recall being overwhelmed by chaos in childhood, taught to solve everything alone, or never receiving the gentle encouragement to share feelings. Such revelations are not blame games. They're simply guiding stars, clues to the deeper layers of ourselves. Consider a friend of mine, let's call her Eleanor, who recounted her struggles with an avoidant husband. She told me how every time she brought up anything serious, he vanished into his workshop, tinkering for hours on end. "He's around," she'd say, "but never truly here." She realized her endless attempts to break through were as futile as pounding on a locked door. She recognized in time that if she continued pounding, she'd only hurt her own hands. So she paused. She let the echoes of her demands fade away and began seeking new ways of communication. One small day at a time, she learned to express her longings in measured tones, less panicked, more open-ended. Instead of confronting him with, "You never talk to me. Do you love me anymore?" she'd gently say, "I miss you when we don't share. I'd be glad to hear about what's on your mind whenever you feel ready." Though it didn't happen overnight, he gradually noticed the shift in her approach. Real intimacy, as they discovered, requires two people to feel safe. And safety often depends on gentle, consistent gestures. If you find yourself in the anxious avoidant trap, it helps to remember that stepping away from the script can be liberating. If you're the anxious partner, give yourself permission to breathe before reacting. Take a moment to check. Am I running on old patterns? What do I actually need right now? Focus on self-soothing. Journal your thoughts, speak with a trusted friend, or engage in a calming ritual that allows you to collect your emotions before you approach your loved one. If you're the avoidant partner, it may feel counterintuitive to open up, yet growth often comes by challenging what feels most comfortable. Perhaps share a small piece of your day, what you felt when you saw that sunset, or an old memory from childhood. Vulnerability can be frightening, but it's the first step toward bridging the chasm between you and your partner. The reward is a deeper, more fulfilling connection that doesn't rely on a cycle of push and pull. When we talk about facing these dynamics, we're really talking about courage. Courage to trust oneself, and courage to reveal genuine fears and desires. It doesn't mean everything changes overnight, nor does it mean we suddenly morph into perfect communicators brimming with confidence. Rather, it's an opportunity to break the old patterns, to say, "This is uncomfortable, but I'll stay with it a little longer." Each time we do, we chip away at the walls we've constructed for so long. And let's not overlook the necessity of empathy. It's easy for the anxious partner to write off the avoidant individual as aloof or uncaring. It's equally tempting for the avoidant to label the anxious partner as needy or clingy. But behind each label lies a human being who learned, at some point, that the world can be harsh. They found ways to cope, ways that might have served them once, but now create distance in adulthood. Stepping back to see this perspective can melt resentment into understanding. After all, empathy has the remarkable power to disarm defenses. In the grand tapestry of human relationships, each of us is searching for a place to belong, a person to cherish. The anxious avoidant trap is a particularly stubborn knot in that tapestry, but knots can be loosened with careful attention. By recognizing the cycle and approaching it with curiosity rather than condemnation, you invite a new pattern, one where both partners can step onto the stage with open hearts. Instead of quicksand that swallows you whole, the relationship ground becomes more stable, more forgiving. Now ask yourself, are you in this trap? If so, take heart. You have a chance to rewrite your part of the story, to shift from fear to understanding, from chasing and fleeing to steady conversation. Let's not forget, it is through awareness, gentle self-examination, and repeated small acts of change that we unravel the old dance and compose a new one. Whether you resonate with Henry's anxious side or find shades of that avoidant partner in your own life, know that these patterns need not define you. They are learned, and what is learned can be unlearned, replaced by a more balanced way of relating. So if you sense your heart pounding in longing, or if you've built walls so tall that no one can climb them, Remember that the anxious avoidant trap may only be a chapter in your story. The next chapter holds fresh opportunities. With time, patience, and kindness, both toward yourself and your partner, you can step forward into a space of greater harmony, where you're neither smothered by love nor starved for it. The question stands, are you in the anxious avoidant trap? If so, step onto this new path of awareness and empathy. Watch how honesty, tempered with compassion, can transform your relationships, and perhaps in the end, transform you as well.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.